Okay, P7, this is our third day working with our decimal numbers. If you remember on Monday in our first lesson we were finding the number that came before when we were counting in tenths, hundredths or thousandths. Yesterday we were working to find a number that came after, so we're increasing yesterday in our tenths, hundredths and thousandths. Today's task is laid out in a similar way, but it is, I think, a little bit more challenging. You're looking to find the number halfway between. Okay, halfway between, and that has to be equally halfway. Okay, so it's not just any number in between; it's halfway between. Okay, and depending on what group you're in, you're dealing with different numbers. So if you're in hexagons and pentagons, you are working to 3 decimal places. If you're in squares and triangles, you're working to 2 decimal places, and if you're in circles, you're just working with a 1 decimal number at the moment. And we're trying to find the number halfway between. So you're going to write the number that comes exactly halfway between these 2 given decimal numbers. Okay, now this is quite challenging. So if you look at the first one here, for circles, it says 3.3 and 3.9. Okay, we need to find out exactly what's halfway between 3.3 and 3.9. So really, the first thing you need to do is find the difference. Find what is between the 2 numbers. So let's just send this to the back. Okay, so we've got the number 3.9 and the number 3.3. Now if we're going to find the number that is exactly halfway between, start by doing a subtraction problem. Okay, so 9 tenths take away 3 tenths would be 6 tenths. Move down our decimal point. And then obviously 3 take away 3 is 0. So we know the first step is to find the difference between the 2 given numbers. So we know the difference between 3.3 and 3.9 is 0.6, is 6 tenths. Because if you increase the tenths column by 6, from a 3 you get to 9. Or if you decrease from 9 to 3, the difference is 0.6. Okay, so the first step on your problem when you're looking at your sums, looking at your word problem, is you need to find the difference between the 2 numbers. So for example here, 189.1 and 189.3, what is the difference? How much more is the bigger number worth than the smaller number? Okay, once you know the difference, the next thing you need to do is half that difference. Okay, so 0.6, half of 0.6, or half of 6, your normal number facts can help you, is obviously 0.3. Okay, so half of 0.6 is 0.3. And once you know, so first step is to find the difference, which was 0.6. And the second step was to half that difference. Once you know what half of the difference is, it's a very straightforward activity. You then simply add that to the lower number. Okay, so if 0.6 was the difference between 3.3 and 3.9, and half of that is 0.3, if you add 0.3 to 3.3, the answer will be 3.6, which means the number exactly halfway between 3.3 and 3.9 is 3.6. Okay, because there's 6 tenths difference. Half of 0.6 is 0.3, in the same way that half of 6 is 3. And if you add those 3 onto the lower number, or if you want, you could subtract it from the higher number, you get to 3.6. Let me show you that one more time here. So if we look at this one, it says 20.3 and 20.5. You know the difference between 20.5 and 20.3 is 0.2. Okay? So the difference between 20.5 and 20.3, you know that's 0.2. Half of 0.2 is 0.1. So if you add 0.1 to 20.3, you get the number 20.4. Okay, so just go over those steps one more time. The first thing you need to do is find the difference between the 2 numbers. Okay, you can do that by subtracting the smaller number from the larger number. Okay, or you can count on between the numbers. Once you know the difference between the 2 numbers, you need to half it and add it to the smaller number. It would also work to subtract it from the bigger number. Either way will be acceptable. So now if you look at the hexagons and the squares and triangles work, it's exactly the same task, except you're working into the tenths column. So instead of 3.3, you had 3.33. Okay. Instead of 20.3, for example, you'd have 20.33. So let's look at these two, 20.33 and 20.35. So we need to find the difference between 20.35 and 20.33. So if you treated that as a subtraction, 5 take away 3 would be a 2. So you're going to subtract in the hundredths column. 3 take away 3 would be a 0. And 20 take away 20 would be another 0. So the difference between 20.35 and 20.33 is 0.02. It's just 2 hundredths. Half of 2 hundredths is 1/100th. So if you add 1/100th to 20.33, you're going to get to 20.34. Where are we? 34. Okay. If you look at this one, this says 20 and 20.6. Half of 20.6. So the difference between 20.6 and 20 is 0.6. So half of 0.6 would be 20. Would be 0.3. So the answer there would be 20.3. Don't worry about putting the 0 in there. That's unnecessary. Okay. So the first step, again, I'll remind you, find the difference between the two numbers. For example, here, 0.71 and 0.67, the difference would be 0.04. You then half it. Again, the answers there will be 0.02. And then you add the answer to that to the lower number. Okay, so 0.02 plus 122.67 will be 122.69. Boys and girls, I know this isn't super easy to explain, but hopefully you're getting the hang of it. If I look at hexagons and pentagons, again, exactly the same process, except we're going down to the thousandth column. So 3.331 and 3.339. The difference between those is 0.08. 0.008, sorry. Okay, because there's 8 more thousandths in 3.339 than there is in 3.331. Half of 0.008 is 0.004. Okay, so if you then add 0.004 to 3.331, will be 3.335. So that will be your answer for the first problem. I'll give another example because it is fiddly, I agree. How about this one? 122.677 and 122.701. The difference between those two is 0.24. The reason I know that is because I know the difference between 677 and 701. I'm using my knowledge of hundreds numbers, even though I'm working in the thousandth column. So the difference between 677 and 701, I know that's 24. Because 23 will get me to 700 and one more will get me to the 24. So I know the difference between those two numbers is 0.024, sorry. Okay, half of that will be 0.012. If I add that to 677, to 0.677, sorry, my answer then becomes 0.689. And all I have to do then is put the 122 at the beginning, and there's my answer there. Okay. I hope that makes sense, P7. I'll just go through those steps again. The first thing you need to do is find the difference between the two numbers. So for example here, 233.765 and 233.805. The difference is 0.40 on these examples, or 0.4. Sorry, 0.04. You then half that, which will be 0.02, and then add it to the lower number. Okay, so for this example here, the answer would be 233.785. Boys and girls, this has been tricky when we've done this in recent years. So if you find the hexagons and pentagons too tricky and you've tried your best and you've watched my video over and over again, roll down and have a look at the squares and triangles if that will help you. Again, if you're still challenged, roll down to the squares and triangles and try that one. Equally, if you do the squares and triangles and you're really getting the hang of it and you're enjoying it, move up to the hexagons and pentagons, or vice versa if you're circles and you want to try squares and triangles. Okay, P7. Well done. Thank you for listening. Remember, you can go back to this video, rewind it, watch it over and over again. Thank you very much.